Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and here's another one of my little greatest hits. And it's probably going to frustrate a bunch of people because there's been a lot of different sort of emulation or analogification or whatever you want to call it type plugins, and this is one of those. It's called Desk4. It's the most recent version of a line of plugins that goes right back to some of the earlier ones that I put out. Even put out for free VST. Like we have super early versions of Desk that are already available that you can already use, which do their sort of subtle little tone shaping stuff. This one's a little bit different. This can work with console. Desk4, like Desk3 before it, is calibrated, which is why you see these funny settings like 27, 18, 26, 54, 84, hike. No, I mean, these are the settings where if you stick console, for instance, I'm going to go and grab that. Console 4 bus, for instance. If that is on your 2 bus and Desk4 is on all of your channels, it will function the same as if console 4 channel was on all your channels, but knobs, controls, things. And this is time for me to show you what all of that is about. Because unlike the earlier desks that were very minimalist, they were designed in such a way that you didn't really have to know about the details, you didn't really have a lot of control over the details. People always seem to want that, and by this time in desk development, all the little bits were brought out from under the hood and put to where you could play with them. And we're going to do that now. As you usually get with something that's designed to work with console, there's not a big effect here. I've already got it actually working with console, so it's peeking out a little bit. You're designed to mix into this. I'm going to stick my safety clipper back on here. Actually, here's a little point. I didn't have it turned on. So when you run into only console bus, which we were just doing before I put the safety clipper back, what happens is your peaks and spikes and things become too exaggerated because console bus is putting back a undistortion that parallels what you put in with something like Desk4. So now what we're going to do is I'll play it again, and you'll hear it without console bus on there. And then I'll turn in Desk4. Observe what happens with the, well, you might not actually see anything happening over here. Not enough of a peak. Desk4. You might not notice a huge change here. It's a subtle thing, but having the controls means this doesn't have to be even slightly subtle. So what we're going to do is make this obvious. If you were using this with console, what you'd be doing is using the overdrive control to set your levels. And it lets you push a very high level through the controls. However, you can get a little crunchy here. Now, Desk is not really designed to be slammed like that. I just did it so that you could hear what it sounded like. But there is more to it than just that. And this is actually a boost. We're not actually getting to attenuate this way. This is how Desk works. But there's more to it than just the distortion on the drive part of it. It's a sort of a fat, chunky overdrive. It's not the same as, say, what you get out of a channel or what you get out of console channel. But we got high choke. That was speeding things up really hard. In fact, that was stopping things so hard that I better pick a different kind of thing to really exaggerate it. How about this? Let's hear what high choke does on this. You can tell this is one of those funny airwindows things. In particular, it's one of those funny airwindows bestseller things because of how much that is not behaving like a simple EQ, because it's not. High choke is a whole other deal. And as you can see, when we crank it up, it starts bringing out lows and doing all kinds of funny stuff. There was no lows in here until we threw on lots of high choke. And then all of a sudden, when you exaggerate it like insanely, it's squishing the highs real hard. But in so doing, the lows get inflated strangely as well. Your stealth kit jam. So you don't necessarily want to throw high choke heavily onto a full mix type of sound. I mean, you can. I've set it up so that you can push it to ridiculous levels for sound effect reasons. But what you might want to do is dial it in more subtly. See, with this, we're already squishing it pretty hard. Hear the hi-hat? And hear what happens to the hi-hat. Now remember, it started out like here. This is a very sensitive control. It's got the capacity to exaggerate wildly, pretty much so that you can use it on strange effects or extremely quiet sounds or who knows what. Like here's it on Alien Kittens. No choke. Half choke. More. The whole way it works, Stealth Kit Jam has a lot of real intense bright highs, so we can hear it doing it this. A lot of brights. Stepping on the brights. And in fact going splat. But then part of the splat is also this peculiar power sag thing. And this one takes more than a little bit of getting used to. Check this out. When I expand, what power sag is set to do? This is mimicking the sound of an analog circuit power supply getting overdrawn to the point where the circuit kind of craps out. In fact, it can completely crap out. And that's very thoroughly crapped out. And then frequency is what makes the difference between the older plugins like Transdesk and TubeDesk. TubeDesk is a larger power supply that brings the energy starving down to a lower frequency so that it's just able to do the front edge and then just kind of sucks the rest of it out. Whereas if you put high frequency to a low number, it goes to a higher frequency. And that's where sounds like Transdesk come from. That's also where sounds like, some of your SSL emulation things with that zingy highs on there. I get that sometimes through this technique of a tiny trace of the power sag that is doing this high grunge. You just find where it's starting to scrunch the highs, take it back out again, and then bring in just a little bit. Let's exaggerate it, as we've done here. And then dry is like this. You turn it on. Everything glitters just a tiny little bit more. Because we have the high frequencies sort of outlining the front edge, and then because of this power sag effect, it's taken some of the guts out of the super highs to the point where they're just sort of more glittery and airy. They can't really push quite as much energy. I'll exaggerate it here, check this out. Here's where it starts to really scrunch. Now that's real glittery. That's more glittery than by default. And that's more normal. Back to the glittery. Works on Alien Kittens too. Hear the hats that way, and then more light and airy. Because we're taking out energy from here. Hear the splat on the highs? And it causes more of a glitter because the initial attack transient isn't followed by as solid of a sound. So here, let's go back to this one and play with power sag and frequency a little bit more. High frequency, and it comes down. And down even further. Until at that very lowest frequency, we're kind of affecting just the general swell and flow of the track. So when we have it like that, it's kind of dynamics inverting the snares and things. You can hear a huge difference in the snare. And if you take an extreme setting like this, let's throw in high choke over at it. And a little overdrive. And now we'll take power sag back out a little bit. Pull out the trim down. A little less high choke, I think. It should never have to be this high, really. We're saturating it pretty hard. And this is where it starts acting almost like point or whatever. It's completely mutating the dynamics of it. Let's speed it up a little bit. And we've squinched up the bass this way. So let's loosen the bass back. Now we have a kind of swing, and now we will let's unclench the high choke a little bit. Now what we've done is set up a sort of weird, analog-y, saturated, mutated sound. And it's not just, what I programmed for you in the plugin and stuff. It's a unique sound using these weird settings that's strikingly different from what we had before. This. That's a very custom sound out of that little guy. And there's any number of other things we can do. Like, let's take something, anything, and we'll put the frequency up to here so that we've got it in this sort of SSL-y mode. Take the high choke down, but we'll be using some of it, and then we'll be using the overdrive because it's a very low-level track. Let's see what we can get out of this. Turning it on might be nice. There we go. Now let's overdrive. And we'll just bring in that high frequency glittery stuff in the power sag. You can hear it grinding on the guitars. In fact, let's tune into that. Down here, I think. And look back. And then a little before and after. Before. After. And then I'll take it back out again. A little sad. There's just not as much going on here. So we'll put it back in. There we go. And the interesting thing about this is that this is actually taking away highs in two different ways. It sounds like it's kind of magnifying them and making them more. But the reason for that is that high choke is conditioning them to some extent, and they don't have it turned up so much that it's doing really strange things. Again, it's there because if you had really quiet sounds, you might need to push the high choke to very high levels in order to get something happening. And then the power sag is taking energy out of the highs and high mids. I dialed it sort of back until it affected the guitar in a certain way. And the combination of all of those things is, on the one hand, pretty much in the zone to go directly into console for bus on the bus if you wanted to do that. But it's also conditioning and doctoring the sound in complicated ways. I've just discovered that hitting enter turns on the music at a certain point. So with that, you got this. And then with it, you get that. Desk4 is my latest plugin. The reason you've got it is because we got up to a certain Patreon level and I started putting out the greatest hits for free. I've got a lot more of them coming, and I've reached $700 a month, so I'm also doing ones from the tail end of that list as well, at my choice. There's another level where you get to pick which one the tail end is, but for now, I'm doing it that way and putting out lots of plugins, all kinds of plugins. And I know that people say, why do you put out so many plugins and they're all just distortions of one kind or another? And, you know, what even is that? Well, this is kind of why. I do this because each of these different ones is like a kind of different circuit, and it has its own distinct thing. And again, with this one, if I take it away and put it back, Desk4, it will default to a setting that you can use for a console mix, being something that would normally go into console channel at the end of all of the channels, and then have console bus at the beginning of the bus. You can swap bus colors in for that, and my most current bus colors handles all sample rates. But you can all, this was handling all sample rates long before bus colors did. And this is the newest, most polished version. It even has a dry wet thing going on, for instance, if you wanted to do horrible things with it. You do something like that. We can use the dry wet to bring in a little bit of it. So yeah, these are the games you can play with Desk4. And now it's out there. It's Patreon supported, which means go ahead and download it and use it. It is free, and I hope you like it.